Let's now start working on our debris. And for the debris we will need the original pieces that were the original chunks, and we can use this transform pieces up over here, and let's just make sure that we are working with the high quality one. Alright, so from here let's maybe drop down a null, and this can be, let's just name this to pieces, and let's grab this and place it over here inside an object merge. So this will be below our lining networks. So I'll place this here and paste this here. Alright, now we don't really need the rocks, so it would be better to create a separate source for the debris here. So let's maybe just go up, and I only want to use this just the fractured pieces that we created without the rocks. So maybe I will copy this whole chain over here, and let's just make some room. So I will copy all of this and I will bring it over here to the right, and I will just get rid of the rocks element. So here we have the pieces and here we have the points. So in the transform pieces we only have the fractured ground. And let's drop down a null from here, and I will name this debris pieces. And let's go ahead and copy this and bring it over in our merge. So we only have the pieces, and you have to make sure that you are working with the high quality ones. From here I will go to my first frame and I will drop down a debris source. And most of the settings for this should be fine. What this will do essentially is just scatter a bunch of points using a group here. So we can select interior group, and we want to scatter on the inside. So essentially what this will do is this will run a simulation, and on these scattered points, when the pieces start to separate from each other, the points will receive an age attribute that will keep incrementing over time. So over at around frame 20 or so, when the explosion happens and pieces start to separate, they will have this age attribute that's over here, which will increase over time. So currently this age attribute will have a lifespan of 1, so this will be 1 second. Let's maybe choose as frame duration and set this to a frame duration of 50. So now the age will increment over 50 frames. This density scale of 1000 should be fine. And we can optimize the scattering portion of this effect, so we don't really need to have a point scatter all over our pieces, but rather only the pieces we are interested in. So over here we can optimize the geometry a little bit, and we can do a similar thing that we did earlier for the rays, where we only selected a bunch of pieces that were close to the lining. So we will do something like this. And we can in fact just go ahead and inside the volume rays network we can just copy all of these nodes up until the unpack, and let's copy these and let's place them over here. So I will get rid of this, I will place this here, and when I plug this into our transform pieces, now we have the same selected chunks, but they will be animated by using the transform pieces. So we only really need to scatter points over these affected points, or rather pieces. So if I go back to my debris source, this should just help optimize things a little bit so we can cache these points a bit faster. So let's maybe run a simulation, and let's increase the cache memory to just add another 0 here, so we can cache a lot more on our timeline. So if I press play, when they start to separate, we should see this age attribute, and this will be mapped using this color ramp by default. So they are now aging, and this will have a frame duration of 50, which should be plenty to create our sources. and we can see that it's running pretty fast. Alright, so we would have to cache, maybe we will cache this all the way up to 100 when we place a file cache. Let's go ahead and further optimize these points. So let's drop down an attribute wrangle, and I will say that if your age is 0, then remove point and delete all the points. So now this will only appear at maybe frame 22. So we are only interested in the points that are aging. And because later down the chain we will want to use a time blend to give all of our points extra frames for further simulations, we will want all of these points to have a constant ID. So before we do this remove point operation, let's give all of these some IDs. So I will say that at ID equals the current PTNum. So from here we can drop down a file cache, and let's cache these points out. So let's only use 100 frames and disable version, and this can be debris PTs, and save to disk. So what happens here is that if I drop down a time shift and I remove the integer frames and I scroll this frame value, we can see that as I increase the value, the points are not moving until they hit an integer frame number. Alright, so only at frame 50 they will start to move. And because we will use multiple substeps in our simulations down the chain, we will want the points to move in between these integer frames as well. So before this time shift I will drop down a time blend, and this by default is looking for this ID attribute which we set over here. So this is why we set this ID attribute here to be equal to our PTNum. So now our time shift, when I preview this, we can see that we can smoothly interpolate between frame values. So this will be very important in a minute. So from here we can maybe drop down a null, and this can become my debris points.